Welcome to Glenda Blasts Your Ear Off, flash fiction stories written by Josh Busch and narrated by Glenda Villamar. Enjoy! You have 1,440 minutes in a day. Use 5 of those minutes and visit freerice.com to play trivia games and help end world hunger. freerice.com. Episode 8, Concord Shipping. Chapter 1. Sarita marveled that the younger woman could coordinate the onslaught of all these vendors loading their packages onto the spaceship all at the same time. Sarita shouted over all the noise, "I don't know how you can keep all this in your head, Demetra, but I want you to know you're doing an amazing job." Demetra shouted back, "Keep flattering me, and I'm bound to ask you for a raise, Captain." Sarita still wasn't used to being called Captain, but she liked the sound of it. She wondered when she'd stop feeling like she was just pretending at being captain, and when she'd stop feeling overwhelmed by all the countless tasks she was responsible for. A man who wore more weapons than clothes entered the docking bay. Sarita approached him and shouted, "Are you Olin? If not, I'd like to know why you're carrying an entire armory onto my ship." "I'm Olin," he shouted at her. "Good to meet you, Captain Sarita." Sarita liked this mercenary. "My cousins have been singing your praises." Olin looked like he was trying to hide a smile and screamed, "I take pride in protecting the company's spaceships." He paused and he went on. "This is your 3rd stint at being captain." Sarita chuckled. "Stint? You like to tell it as it is, I see. Don't worry, Mr. Olin. I'm no stranger to ship life." Chapter 2. Sarita didn't like these 2 passengers. The man, Aldo, sure thought a lot of himself, and the woman, Isella, acted like the spaceship was a bad joke. Isella asked, "Has the ship passed all the inspections? I trust you've had all the inspections." Sarita was giving them a tour of the spaceship. "Yes, before you arrived. I had just paid off the inspector to ignore everything that's wrong with the ship, but I think we'll be able to break orbit." Isella looked shocked, but said, "Oh good, you have a sense of humor. As long as you take our safety seriously, you can be whatever you want." "Glad I have your permission. And here's the engine room," which was all pipes and 1,000 different parts hitting one another. The captain was relieved to see the engineer and said, "Una, good to see you." Una said with warmth, "And you, Captain? Were those our passengers?" "Were." Sarita turned and wasn't surprised to see the rich couple fleeing the engine room. Sarita said, "That's them. They're Aldo and Isella. Are we ready for takeoff?" Una bowed and said, "Yes, Captain. Everything is in working order." Sarita took her word for it and said, "I never doubted you for a second. Thank you, Una." "Of course. Are we on for cards tonight? I'd like to have a chance to win back some of the money you took from me on our last trip." Sarita started walking after the passengers and said, "Sure, I'd love to take more of your money. Good to see you." Una said, "You said that already. Good to see you." Chapter 3. Sarita had never seen a pilot quite like this. He was meditating on the cockpit floor, and he had a goofy grin on his face. Sarita sat down in the co-pilot seat and said, "You must be Russ. Rise and shine. It's time to depart." The man opened up his eyes, stood up, stretched, and said, "Captain Sarita, nice to meet you," as he got comfortable in the pilot's chair. Sarita glanced at the readouts, cleared her throat, and spoke into the ship-wide speakers. "This is the captain. Momentarily we will be launching. I repeat, momentarily we will be launching. Strap in. And Royce, please check on our passengers." Sarita watched Russ getting the ship ready. He saw her watching and said, "Nothing to worry about, Captain. I've done this hundreds of times." Sarita replied, "My cousins have the utmost confidence in you, and because I trust them, I'll trust you know what you're doing." Russ looked at Sarita with a raised eyebrow, asking if it was okay to go. "Launch," was all she said, and then moments later the shaking began. Sarita always thought breaking out of a planet's atmosphere was like being held in the grasp of a giant's hand, and he sure was trying awful hard to get her bones to pop out of her skin. Chapter 4. Sarita looked at Royce and wondered why she had ever slept with him. and she surmised it had to have been out of loneliness. Royce said, "I've got a number of clients already set up, but not nearly enough." "I'm glad to hear you're off to a good start. But we have ample time to get more clients," said Sarita. "I have no doubt you'll fill up the cargo hold up to the ceiling." Royce ran a hand through his hair and said, "Every trip, I worry." Sarita said, "Did you know my cousins call you the Rainmaker? You always make it rain clients." Royce smiled. "No, I didn't know that." And then he touched her arm. Sarita shook her head. Royce removed his hand, and Sarita said, "That was a one-time thing. As fun as it was, it won't happen again." Royce stiffened, looked away, and said, "Oh, I understand. Well, I'll get back to hunting down clients then." "Thanks, Royce," she said, and left him to it. Chapter 5. Sarita watched helplessly as Dimitra writhed on the examination table in the infirmary. Royce was trying his best to attend to the mess that was Dimitra's lower leg. Dimitra shook and couldn't make herself sit still. "It was some kind of animal. It came out of nowhere and wouldn't let go. Can I get something for the pain?" Sarita wholeheartedly agreed. Yes. And Royce? Something to calm her down? Royce, who besides being their business liaison, was also their medic, answered, "I think both are in order." And in less than 20 seconds, Royce found and injected Dimitra with the meds. Dimitra said angrily, "It just wouldn't let go. All I could think to do was to punch it. Oh, that pain medicine is fast. I must have punched that small hairy thing 10 times before it let go and ran off." Sarita said, "It was hairy. What else do you remember about it?" Royce interrupted, "This is going to hurt. Please, hold still." Dimitra screamed, and then she started to cry. "What are you doing to me?" Royce winced. "I had to stop the bleeding. I'm sorry. It stopped. Now I have to clean it, then bandage it." Dimitra said between sobs, "What else do I remember? It had sharp teeth, and that thing is all mouth. 6 legs and claws. It can hold on tight. But it was small. It wasn't bigger than a foot. Ow! Ow!" Royce said, "Almost done." Sarita said, "I'm sorry this thing got on board, Dimitra." "Me too," wailed Dimitra. Chapter 6. Sarita walked one of the many nonsensical, twisty, claustrophobic hallways with Olin, and Sarita wished she could rip off the walls and see into the guts of the ship. Olin grunted. This creature could be anywhere. Sarita agreed. And could attack anyone at any time. Olin said, "I'm not going to stop hunting until I find this thing." Sarita patted his shoulder. "This ship has so many hiding places. It could be days until we see it again. Don't forget to sleep." The passengers, Aldo and Isella, stepped out of their cabin, and Sarita thought Isella looked angry. Isella spat, "What kind of ship are you running here, Captain? Do we seriously have to worry about getting half-eaten every time we leave our room to use the bathroom?" Sarita, unruffled, said, "I'm sorry. We're doing our best to locate the creature." "Your best? Why don't I find comfort in that?" Olin stepped up to Isella and said, "Then why don't you help and show us how it's done?" And he thrust the handle of a weapon at her. To Sarita, it seemed that Isella acted like Olin was trying to hand her a very deadly fish. Aldo stepped forward and said, "I'll help," and he took the offered weapon from Olin. Chapter 7. Sarita heard the scream and went running. Who did the creature get this time? Sarita didn't want to see another wound like Dimitra had received. She wondered for the millionth time why there were so many hallways on this accursed ship. It could take her a while to locate whoever the creature got to this time. 5 minutes later, Sarita turned a corner, and in the middle of the hall, she saw Royce on the ground, and he wasn't moving. She nudged him, and he didn't move. Sarita moved to reach his neck to feel for a pulse, and it was then she saw there was a knife sticking out of the left side of his stomach. Whoever put it there had driven the knife upwards, aiming for organs. There was blood all over Royce's face. He must have coughed up blood before he died, and not that Sarita really needed the confirmation, but she found no pulse. Sarita was shocked and sad, but mostly she felt rage. Who would do this? Just how was she supposed to figure out who was responsible? She hated she didn't know the new crew better. She wasn't a detective. It wasn't in her job description, but she realized it was now. Chapter 8. Sarita read the email for a third time. It was from a company called Concord Shipping. The email said, "If you survive this journey, consider yourself warned. You are in our territory. Concord Shipping owns this trade route. Enjoy the surprises we put on your ship. Leave our territory." Sarita wanted to punch a hole into something. Surprises? How could Concord have put something onto the ship without her knowing about it? Then it dawned on her. Concord must have posed as a client and paid them to ship a crate that was full of their surprises. The Concord crate must have had the creature in it. Sarita bit into the side of her cheek. Why did somebody have to kill Royce, when it was bad enough that there was some vicious creature on the loose that was unleashed on them by some rival shipping company that liked to play dirty? Things were complicated enough, and getting more so by the hour. She was going to find that Concord crate. There were hundreds of crates, but she didn't care. She was going to find it, and maybe she could stop some attacks before they happened. As Sarita was making her way to the cargo hold, she saw Aldo. He smiled at her. Sarita wasn't in the mood for small talk, but it seemed Aldo was. Sarita looked at him, really looked at him, and saw he had something on the right side of his neck. The first thought was he must have had a run-in with the creature, but Sarita knew he'd be way worse off. No. It looked like he had a bug bite. Sarita stopped and asked, "Any sign of the creature, Aldo?" "No, not yet. You?" Sarita frowned. "No sign. From anyone. Thanks for helping us look. I appreciate it." "Of course. You know, Captain, it's a delight to see you. And, might I say, I do like the cut of your company's uniform. I especially like how tight your uniform is on you. You are a stunning woman. I'd love to see more of you, without the uniform getting in the way." Sarita couldn't believe it. "You're hitting on me? Does Azella know you're doing this?" "It'll be our little secret." Sarita clenched her fists and glared at this entitled rich man. Did he think everything was his for the taking? Sarita really wanted to punch him, but instead she said, "Let me know if you see the creature," and kept walking towards the cargo hold. Chapter 9. Sarita was glad Una was on the ship, because Una was the closest thing to a friend she had here. Talking to Una, Serena could let her guard down and talk about all that was happening. They were going through the crates. Sarita guessed they had gone through half of them, with no luck. Una, in a fit of frustration, pushed a crate over and yelled, "Ugh!" When she calmed down, she said to Sarita, "I think there's something wrong with me." Sarita stopped rifling through the crate she was working on and asked, "What do you mean?" Una answered, "I don't feel like myself. In case you haven't noticed, I'm pretty irritable. More so than usual. You do seem on edge. I just chalked it up to dealing with all that's going on." Una roared, "And this bug bite itches like crazy! How did a bug even get on board?" Sarita thought of Aldo in the hall. He had a bug bite too. She started to say, "How did a bug get into..." and she realized she knew exactly how a bug got onto the ship. Una said, "It's like I can't control myself, and I'm always mad. The slightest thing sets me off. Just like when I killed Royce. He wouldn't let me get that part we need. You know how cheap he can be. We can't skimp on engine parts if we want to keep the ship running." Sarita had a weapon in her hand, and she said, "Una, you just said you killed Royce." Una looked surprised. Sarita wondered if Una was surprised because she had admitted what she'd done, or if because she had done the killing. Una said quietly, "I'm not myself." Sarita held the weapon at her side. "It's got to be the bug bite. It's got to be one of the surprises from Concord Shipping." Una laughed. "It's too bad Royce isn't alive to run tests on all of us to see what was in this bug bite." Sarita couldn't wrap her head around that Una had killed Royce. It just didn't make any sense. The three of them had crewed together before, and Sarita couldn't remember a single argument. They might not have been companionable, per se, but they respected one another. Sarita couldn't believe what the bite had done to her friend. Una wasn't being Una. It wasn't her fault, but Sarita knew if anyone else on the ship had been the murderer, she'd be less sure that it was all the bug bite's fault. And then Sarita remembered the bite on Aldo's neck. Una asked, "What are you planning on doing with that weapon, boss?" Sarita pointed the weapon at Una and said, "You're going to have to come with me. I'm going to lock you in your cabin. The same with Aldo." Sarita was glad Una seemed to want to cooperate. "Yeah, okay. That's probably a good idea. Aldo was bitten too? I wonder what he's done." Chapter 10. Sarita looked at everyone, and she had no idea if she could trust any of them. She wished Una was here, but Sarita had had to lock her only friend in her cabin. Having to do that felt like a personal betrayal, but Sarita supposed she was finally getting accustomed to the role of captain. Sarita felt a tinge of pride that she'd risen to the occasion. She was done doubting her decisions. Sarita exhaled slowly and announced, "We're under attack from a rival shipping company called Concord Shipping. They posed as clients, and they snuck some nasty surprises for us in the containers. I don't know how many things or what things they've dumped into our laps. The creature? That's them. I've also discovered there's a bug on board whose sting makes the victim lose their faculties." Russ laughed. "Captain, this is some kind of joke, right? I had no idea you had a sense of humor. You're hilarious. What else should we expect from this attack?" Sarita scowled and continued, "I just had to lock up Una in her quarters. She had a bite mark, complained about losing her mind, and then she admitted to killing Royce." Russ wasn't laughing anymore, and he said, "Is this really happening?" Sarita kept going. "We're all going to do two things right now. We're all going to strip naked and check one another for bites, and then whoever doesn't have a bite mark will start wearing a spacesuit until the voyage is over." Multiple people groaned. Sarita wasn't looking forward to being stuck inside of a suit for a week, but it was better than getting bitten and watching her sanity dissolve. "Right here? Right now? I'm not doing that. Aldo can check me in private." Sarita hadn't been looking forward to this moment, and she said, with as much authority as she could muster, "That's not happening, because Aldo has already been bitten. When we're all done here, Aldo, you'll be locked in a new cabin. The same goes for anyone else who has been bitten." Everyone turned and stared at Aldo, and he said, "I have been feeling a little off, but not enough to warrant me being locked up like a criminal. Una killed Royce. I haven't done anything." Demetra said, "Yet. Haven't done anything yet. If Concord Shipping gifted us with the creature, then we can assume the bug is just as dangerous." Sarita thought Aldo looked like he was contemplating making a run for it, and Aldo said, "Captain, how do we even know this Concord Shipping is real? What if you're the one who's lost it and is making all of this up?" Olin cleared his throat and said, "Everyone is going to do what the captain has asked. Everyone." Sarita said, "They sent us an email. Anyone who wants to can read it. And I too will be undressing to be checked for bites." And she started undressing. Russ said, "Well, I guess it is a little hot in here." And he started to undress, as did Olin and Demetra. Isella was livid. "When I get off this ship, I'm going to make sure your little company is ruined." Sarita asked, "Demetra, would you examine our guest for me?" As Demetra nodded, Olin said, "Captain, if you need my help, just say the word." Aldo said, "Honey, just do it. Don't fight." Isella was so angry her face was red, but she took off her clothes and whipped them on the deck. After everyone was checked to her satisfaction, Sarita said, "Okay, everyone is free of bites. Now everyone get dressed and throw on a spacesuit." Russ said, "All that excitement for nothing. Well, I, for one, can't wait to smell my own bad breath. in my helmet for a week. Chapter 11. Sarita could see Olin's fear, that he wasn't as tough as he pretended to be. She asked, "Walk me through it again?" Olin, who was sitting on the examination table in the infirmary, said, "I was escorting Aldo back from the bathroom to his cabin when the creature jumped on Aldo and it ripped open his neck." Demetra, who was cleaning up the wound on Olin's arm, asked, "How big was it? When it got to me, it was maybe a foot big." Olin winced as Demetra saw to his wound. "It's grown. It's at least 3 feet tall now." Sarita had never heard of anything that could grow that quickly, but with genetic engineering, she supposed anything was possible. Sarita asked, "I heard weapons fire. Do you think you hit it?" Olin looked insulted. "I'm sure of it. It's the only reason it stopped attacking me. But Captain, this is a good thing. If it's hurt, it's probably bleeding, which means we might be able to track it." Sarita said, "Olin, I hope you're right. I really want to be able to track this monster." She paused and went on, "But now I've got to go tell Isella about Aldo being gone." Chapter 12. But like everything else on the voyage, nothing was going according to Sarita's plan. She, for sure, hadn't planned on someone firing, without her go-ahead, the ship's weapons at who knew what, so Sarita ran. Sarita wondered if Una got out of her cabin. If anyone on board could find a way to get out of being locked up, it was the ship's engineer. Or worse. Was this a new surprise being thrown at them by Concord shipping? Sarita made it to the cockpit. Russ was there. He had his helmet off, which Sarita found puzzling, and he was gleefully shooting the weapon controls like he was a kid in an arcade. The noise of the guns was extremely loud, and Sarita had to yell, "Russ, what are you shooting at?" Russ turned towards her, and Sarita thought he looked unhinged. But how had this happened? She had checked him for bites herself. Russ winked and said, "Sarita, you have to try this. It's exhilarating." Sarita feigned enthusiasm and said, "Okay, it's my turn." And Sarita was thankful that Russ got up from the weapons station and that she could hear again without the guns booming away. Sarita walked and put herself between Russ and the weapons station, and she simply stated, "Your helmet." Russ scratched his head and said, "I must have been bitten somewhere on my head a while ago. It itches me like crazy, so I took off my helmet so I could scratch whenever I want, which is a lot, let me tell you." Sarita hoped she could get him behind a locked door as easily as she had with Una. Sarita nodded and said, "No point in wearing the suit anymore. You'll be more comfortable at least." Russ whispered, "You don't want me to fire the guns? It was so fun." Sarita tried to remain calm and said, "I'd love to, but I want to save the ammunition in case we have to defend ourselves." Russ chortled, "In case we have to defend ourselves? Ha! We're up to our necks in defending ourselves, mon capitan, and we're not doing a great job of it, are we?" Sarita agreed. "No, we're not. Now, Russ, will you walk with me to your cabin?" Russ stiffened and asked, "So you can lock me up?" Sarita exhaled slowly, trying to calm herself, and said, "Maybe on our way we'll run into the creature, and you can help me kill it." Russ squinted at her, smiled like he had a plan, and said, "I like the part where I help you hunt down the creature, but not the part where I'm sidelined. You need me, Captain. Think about it. There's no one else to help you. Olin and Demetra are wounded, and I have a feeling Isella wouldn't mind tearing your eyes out. Should I let Una out as well, so the 3 of us can hunt the creature together?" She had meant to say it sarcastically, but as she said it, Sarita knew she needed any help she could get. Russ pumped both fists and yelled, "All right, Captain, now you're talking. I knew I was going to like you." Chapter 13. Sarita, Russ, and Una walked down yet another twisting and cramped, half-dark hallway. In every odd bend and alcove, Sarita thought the creature was there, and she brought her weapon to bear. Una snarled, "It's too bad the trail of blood ended. I wish we had a hunting dog with us. She could find this elusive thing with no trouble." Russ howled like a dog. And then Una did too. Sarita tried not to be unnerved by this, and also at the thought of the danger she was putting herself in by letting them both have a weapon. Sarita could see Royce's face in her mind, and knew she couldn't let her guard down. Another bend in the hallway. The floor lifted upwards. The three turned a corner, and the floor tilted down, over and over. Sarita bounced back and forth from vigilance to boredom. The sound of their clomping boots on the floor was like a song. Sarita wondered who was in charge at Concord Shipping, and what other stunts they had pulled over the years, all in the name of business. Una called out, "Ready or not, here we come!" Russ chuckled. Then, as the creature attacked him from behind, Russ screamed. Sarita was dumbfounded by how quickly the creature worked. She could see a claw that had entered the pilot's back and exited out through his stomach. Una kicked Russ, spinning him so he faced away from them. Sarita and Una both fired at the six-legged nightmare. Sarita tried not to hit Russ, but she doubted it mattered. There was no saving him. Chapter 14. The ship had arrived at their destination, and Sarita walked off the ship. Demetra was doling out the crates to customers who were complaining that their deliveries had been broken into, but none complained too much with Olin there glowering at them. A local physician was examining Una and was fairly positive there was a medicine that could negate the bug's influence. Isella pushed the deceased Aldo on a cart. She stopped by Sarita and said, "I will never forget this accursed trip was all your fault. Do the universe a favor and get a new job." Sarita wanted to say a lot of things, but instead she said, "I'm sorry about Aldo, and I'm sorry—" Isella interrupted. "You can stuff your stories." And Isella turned away and walked away from Sarita. Then Sarita saw one of her cousins, one of her bosses. He looked grim and said to her, "You did a good job. I'm not sure another captain would have been able to do better. Royce, that's quite a loss for us. I liked him. I'm going to miss him. And Russ, well, he wasn't with us long." Sarita said, "They are both among the stars now. That's where we left them." The cousin nodded and said somberly, "That's a good place for them, where they would have wanted to rest. Now, as for Concord Shipping, what can you tell me?" Sarita said warily, "That you owe me a raise." The end. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We look forward to bringing you the next episode in Glenda Blasts Your Ear Off. Not sure what that was. My computer made a noise. I have to say it, not. It's like a tongue twister for me.